I have face blindness, and have always relied on clothing to recognize people. But my husband never took it seriously. Upon hearing that his white moonlight was in a difficult situation, he ignored my pleas and traveled far to the capital. To buy a hairpin for his beloved, he pawned the blue robe I had sewn for him with my own hands. A month later, he came back, only to see me holding another man's arm, looking loving and sweet. That man was wearing the very green robe he had lost. Later I heard he went around looking for evidence like a madman, trying to prove that he was my husband. But no one believed him. That was the night before Jo Soo-hui was to leave. The candle in the room crackled and sparked with a pop, making my heart ache painfully too. I fumbled through the pile of luggage, my fingers touching the cold scabbard, touching the hard rations. Yet I couldn't find the green robe I had stayed up all night for half a month to sew. No need to look. Jo Soo-hui's voice came from above my head, carrying that dullness and coldness unique to martial artists. I pawned it. My hand froze in midair, like a piece of dead wood, pawned it. I raised my head in disbelief, trying hard to see his expression clearly. But I suffered from an extremely severe eye condition, a lingering ailment from what people called soul separation sickness. In my eyes, everyone's features were just a blurry mass, like an ink painting smeared by water. Whether beautiful or ugly, whether close or distant, they were all the same to me. So when I recognize people, I've always relied solely on their clothes. That blue-green robe was made from cloud brocade, worth its weight in gold even in the capital. To buy that fabric, I embroidered until my eyes nearly went blind on 3 double-sided embroideries, just to exchange for an outfit worthy of his figure. Fearing he'd be looked down upon in the capital, I deliberately embroidered vigorous bamboo leaves in hidden patterns on the cuffs. That was his name, and also my wish for his safe return. But now, he said he pawned it. Jeweled hairpins in the capital are expensive. I wanted to bring a decent meeting gift, but I didn't have enough money on hand. Jo Soo-hui said it as if it were only natural, as though what he'd pawned wasn't my heart and soul, but a rag that could be discarded at any time. It is just a piece of clothing. I'll redeem it when I come back. I slowly withdrew my hand, my fingertips curling up on the rough table. Just a piece of clothing. He knew full well that my eye condition was severe, and that blue-green robe was the only token by which I could recognize him in a sea of people. What he pawned wasn't just clothing. It was my sense of security in this household. The last shred of respect he had for me as my husband Jo Soo-hui. I took a deep breath, suppressing the metallic sweetness in my throat. You know Ali is an imperial consort. Does she lack a hairpin from you? You took the clothes I painstakingly sewed to please another woman. Where does that leave me? Jo Soo-hui seemed to be angered by my relentless attitude. He whipped around abruptly, stirring up a gust of cold wind. Yishui, stop being unreasonable. Ali is in a difficult situation now. She sent word that she wants to see me. She must have hit a wall she can't get past. I was once a stable hand for her family, and received great kindness from her. How can I just stand by and do nothing? You are so petty, and you still want to fuss over a piece of clothing at a time like this? Petty? I couldn't help but laugh out loud, yet tears were welling up in my eyes. 3 years ago, he collapsed by the roadside covered in blood. I was the one who carried him back, spent all my savings to hire a doctor, and took care of him day and night, for 3 months. When he woke up, he said he wanted to repay me, said he wanted to. I thought he was a prodigal son turning over a new leaf, genuinely wanting to settle down. But as it turns out, he had always been hiding that high and mighty imperial consort in his heart. We've been married for 3 years, and he has never touched me. He said martial artists must preserve their primal yang, and I believed him. Thinking about it now, he was just keeping himself pure for someone else. Fine, go if you want to go. I stood up, no longer looking at his face that radiated impatience even through the blur. But Jo Soo-hui, remember this. You are the one who pawned away the road home. Josué said nothing more. He shouldered his pack and strode off into the night. That night, the wind was strong, the door was blown and rattled noisily, sounding exactly like someone sobbing. Josué left, and it was a whole month. During this month, rumors spread throughout the village. Some said he had climbed to higher branches and no longer wanted me. His blind wife. Others said he had encountered mountain bandits on the road and was long dead. I turned a deaf ear and continued weaving and embroidering every day as usual. But every dusk, I would habitually sit under this old locust tree at the village entrance, listening to the footsteps of passers-by. Even though I knew, he most likely wouldn't come back. That day, a thick fog rose, a vast expanse of white, shrouding the entire Daxi village within it, making it hard to distinguish people from animals beyond 10 paces. I held the laundry basin I had just finished washing by the river and walked back. The cold climbing up from my trouser legs, freezing my knees with aching pain. Suddenly, a series of hurried yet feeble footsteps came from deep within the thick fog. I instinctively stopped in my tracks, squinting my eyes and trying hard to make it out. The fog churned, and a tall, slender figure stumbled into my line of sight. That person was extremely tall with broad shoulders. Though his steps were staggering, one could still tell he had the foundation of a martial artist. Most importantly, he was wearing a cyan long robe. That cyan was particularly striking against the grayish-white fog. Me heart skipped a beat, and I almost held my breath. As the person came closer, I clearly saw the subtle pattern at the cuffs, flickering in and out of view with each swing. Those were a few bold bamboo leaves, embroidered by my own hands, stitch by stitch. That was my blue robe. An overwhelming joy instantly flooded my mind. In that moment, all the grievances, anger, and disappointment seemed to be wiped away by this blue robe that was lost and found again. He came back. He redeemed the clothes. He still cared about this home after all. Husband. I threw down the wooden basin and rushed over recklessly, grabbing that person's sleeve. That person's body suddenly stiffened, his whole being tensing up like a fully drawn bowstring in an instant. A strong smell of blood hit my nose, mixed with the scent of vegetation from the mountain forest. How did you get hurt like this? My voice trembled as I reached out to support his arm. Where my palm touched, the fabric was wet and sticky, clearly a serious wound. That person didn't speak, just let me hold on to him. Through my blurry vision, I could feel him looking down at me. That gaze carried weight, with scrutiny, with vigilance, and a trace of depth I couldn't understand. Did you run into mountain bandits, or did something happen in the capital? I was so anxious tears were about to fall, assuming he had suffered this disaster just to redeem the clothes. Quick, come home with me. We still have wound medicine at home. He remained silent, but his body was no longer so tense. Instead, with my support, he shifted most of his body weight onto me. He seemed to have reached the end of his strength. After a long while, an extremely soft nasal hum came from above my head. That voice was somewhat hoarse, its original tone unrecognizable. But I didn't think much of it. Josué rarely spoke on normal days anyway, so not wanting to talk after being so badly injured was normal. I supported him, moving toward home step by difficult step. His body was burning hot, like a fire was blazing inside, but he could really endure. The jostling along the way must have made his wound agonizingly painful, yet he didn't let out even a single muffled groan. After entering the courtyard, I helped him into the inner room and had him lie face down on the bed. Lighting the oil lamp, only then could I see the wound on his back clearly. It was a long blade wound. Flesh curled back, deep enough to expose bone, blood staining nearly half his back red. Besides the blade wound, there were also several marks where arrows had grazed him. This was definitely not an injury ordinary mountain bandits could have caused, I said while carefully cutting open that blood-soaked blue robe. watching that carefully selected cloud brocade fall apart under the scissors. I surprisingly felt no regret at all, only lingering fear. If that blade had gone an inch deeper, this person probably really wouldn't have made it back. Warm water wiped away the blood around the wound, and when the wound medicine was sprinkled on, his muscles trembled violently, sweat sliding down his taut back. "If it hurts, just cry out. No one's gonna laugh at you," I said softly, wrapping bandages around him layer by layer. He turned his head to the side, face buried in the pillow, showing only one ear and half of his slender neck. After treating the wound, I was already drenched in sweat. I went to the kitchen and brought back a bowl of warm rice porridge, wanting to feed it to him. "Can you sit up on your own?" I asked. He propped himself against the edge of the bed, struggled to turn over, and leaned against the headboard. In the dim yellow lamplight, I studied this face. Still a blurry mass, couldn't make out the brows and eyes, could only vaguely sense that the contours seemed softer than in my memory, not as sharp and intimidating. Probably due to excessive blood loss, his complexion was deathly pale. I scooped a spoonful of rice porridge and brought it to his lips. He paused for a moment before slightly parting his lips to take it in. As the warm liquid went down his throat, he seemed to regain some strength. "Thank you," he said in a low voice. In his eyes, everything I did was only natural, as if I was the one who had married above my station. Even when I saved his life back then, he only coldly said, "I'll take responsibility." Those two words were too polite, too distant, and also too gentle. A strange feeling rose in my heart. "Husband," I asked tentatively, "did the fever muddle your head?" He didn't answer immediately, but reached out to take the bowl from my hands, his fingertips inadvertently brushing against the back of my hand. His fingers were slender and dry, his fingertips bearing a thin layer of calluses, yet unlike Josue's sandpaper rough hands, they carried a refinement that came from years of playing the chin and handling ink brushes. In that instant, an absurd thought exploded in my mind. I stared fixedly at the green robe on him that had been cut open, my gaze falling on the half-sleeve discarded on the ground. The embroidered bamboo leaf pattern had fine, dense stitches, with a tiny back hook at the starting point. That was my unique stitching technique, to prevent the thread from unraveling. The clothes were right. The clothes were definitely right. But the person before me wearing the green robe I had sewn with my own hands, that feeling he gave off, that aura, that warmth when we touched, was he really still the same person? If it were Josué, he would complain that the rice porridge was too bland and urge me to get him some meat. If it were Josué, he would shove me aside and gulp it down roughly by himself. If it were Josué, he would never hold that chipped coarse porcelain bowl with such an almost careful posture. The man finished the last sip of soup and gently placed the bowl on the bedside. He raised his head, and those eyes, I couldn't see clearly, seemed to be quietly gazing at me. "Yi Shui," he called my name. Not the cold, hard way of calling out full name and surname, nor an impatient shout. These two words rolled around the tip of his tongue, unexpectedly carrying a hint of tender affection, like a spring breeze gently brushing past my eardrums. Me whole body stiffened, as if my blood had reversed its flow in an instant. This man knew my name. He was wearing my husband's clothes, severely injured, appearing on the road my husband must take to come home. But he was not Josué. I abruptly stood up, and because the movement was too big, I knocked over the stool behind me. I was just about to question him, but he suddenly reached out and grabbed my wrist. He didn't use much force, yet it carried an unquestionable plea. "There are people outside looking for me." His voice was pressed extremely low, carrying a grim chill, the kind of aura only someone who had truly crawled out from a pile of corpses would have. "If Madam throws me out now, I will surely die." He called me Madam. At that moment, a bolt of lightning suddenly streaked across outside the window, illuminating the room. I saw the corners of his pale lips curl up slightly. A half smile that wasn't quite a smile yet, carrying a rogue-like certainty. Since Madam brought me home, and this blue robe is now on my body, from tonight on, I am your husband. Thunder rumbled past, torrential rain poured down, washing the thick fog of that night completely clean, and temporarily burying all the secrets of this world beneath the clamor of the rain. I stood frozen in place, my wrist still held by that warm, large hand. From tonight on, I am your husband. These words were like a spell, pinning me where I stood. Absurd, too absurd. I should immediately shake off his hand, rush out to call for help, or grab that wood-chopping axe to drive this lecturer who broke into my home out. I am a married woman. Even if Josue treats me badly, even if he abandoned me for another woman, I absolutely cannot tolerate a strange man spouting nonsense on my bed. But my feet seemed rooted to the ground, unable to move a single step. Because he said, "There are people outside looking for me. I am as good as dead." His hands were trembling slightly, the warmth of his palm transmitting through the skin. It was the temperature of life, and also the desperate desire to survive. I could feel his weakness, just like when I picked up Josue in the snow back then. Back then, I was just as soft-hearted. Let go of me first. I took a deep breath, trying to make my voice sound calmer. He obligingly released his grip, weakly leaning back against the pillow, looking so calm and unhurried, as if the person who had just made threats wasn't him. "I'll go boil some hot water for you." I turned around, not daring to look at that blurry face anymore, and rushed out of the room as if fleeing. Standing in front of the stove, listening to the gurgling sound of the water in the pot, my heart was in a tangled mess. Who was this person? Why was he wearing Josue's clothes? Where was Josue now? Could it be that Josue really met with misfortune and was killed by this person? The moment this thought surfaced, I pushed it down. Josue's martial arts were exceptional, although this person seemed to have some foundation. Being injured like this, how could he possibly kill Josue? So did Josue really pawn his clothes, and this person happened to buy them? Regardless of the truth, the current situation was, I had invited a wolf into my home. This man was obviously a fugitive, being hunted down. If I reported him to the authorities or kicked him out, he'd definitely be dead. Besides, what if those people chasing him hadn't gone far yet and discovered he was hiding in my house? Would they silence me too? Thinking of this, I shuddered. Forget it. I'll keep him calm for now. Once his wounds heal a bit, I'll send him away. The rain continued for a full 3 days. During these 3 days, I lived on edge. That man, however, was quite well behaved. He spent most of his time unconscious, and when awake, he'd just drink some rice porridge and stayed silent when I changed his bandages. He didn't ask who I was, nor did he mention his own origins, as if he truly considered himself the man of this house. I tacitly didn't ask much either, just treating it as if I'd taken in an injured wild beast at home. Until the 4th day, the rain stopped, and sunlight filtered through the worn window paper. I carried the medicine into the room and saw that man bracing himself against the edge of the bed, trying to get up. "Are you crazy?" I rushed forward in a few steps to support him. "Your wound hasn't healed yet. Why are you moving around?" He turned his head, sunlight falling on his face. Although I still couldn't see his features clearly, I could sense his mood seemed quite good. Been lying down too long. "My bones are going soft." His voice had regained some of its clarity, sounding somewhat familiar, like the sound of some musical instrument. "Besides, I can't always have Madam wait on me." "Madam," again with Madam. I frowned and shoved the medicine bowl into his hands. "Don't call me that. I am not your Madam." He took the medicine bowl without arguing, just smiled slightly, naturally. But since Miss Yishue saved me, there should be some sort of arrangement. I must have caused you quite a bit of trouble these past few days. So he knew his boundaries. Leave once your wounds heal. I said with a straight face. The cost of the clothes and medicine, you'll pay me for both when the time comes. He took a sip of the bitter medicine without even furrowing his brow. Naturally. It is just that I am penniless right now, and this blue robe is torn too. At the mention of the blue robe, my heart ached again. You don't need to pay for the clothes, I said coldly. I made them for my late husband. They're useless now anyway. Since Josu wasn't coming back, I might as well consider him dead. Hearing this, his hand holding the medicine bowl paused slightly. Then he nodded thoughtfully. I see. My condolences. This "my condolences" was said so casually, yet it sounded off no matter how I heard it. The days that followed were unexpectedly peaceful. This man recovered from his injuries incredibly fast. Within just a few days, he could get up and walk around. He said his surname was Chen, with a single given name Shi, only mentioning he was a traveling merchant from elsewhere, who lost his money to bandits on the road. Chen Chi, Chen Chinian. I silently completed his name in my heart. Although he didn't say it, I somehow felt this name suited him better. Although he looked like a pampered young master, he didn't slack off one bit when it came to doing work. That day when I came back from the market, I could see from afar the figure in cyan chopping firewood in the courtyard. He held that heavy axe in his hands, yet his movements weren't as wide and sweeping as Josue's, but rather focused on finesse. Each time it fell, the wood split right on cue, stacked neatly to the side. Sunlight poured over him, sweat soaking through that cyan shirt I had mended, revealing a different kind of tension. I watched, somewhat dazed. Josue never helped me chop firewood. He said it was rough work that would ruin his hands and affect his blade practice. So for these 3 years, heavy work like chopping firewood and carrying water was all done by myself. You are back. Seeing me come in, he set down the axe and walked over naturally, taking the basket from my hands. It is so heavy. Why didn't you call for a cart? His tone was natural and familiar, as if we really were a couple who I somewhat uncomfortably avoided his hand. Why did you get up to work? What if your wound splits open? It has been fine for a while now. He smiled and didn't insist, just followed behind me into the kitchen. I noticed we were running low on firewood, so I chopped some while I was at it. Oh right! You like spicy food. I just saw the peppers in the garden had turned red. Picked some. How about I make you some spicy diced chicken tonight? My hands washing the rice suddenly froze mid-motion. How do you know I like spicy food? I turned back to look at him in disbelief. Josue never eats spicy food to accommodate him. The meals at home were always bland. When I wanted to eat something spicy, I could only sneak into the kitchen and dip some chili sauce to satisfy my cravings. Chen Chinian's hands paused while washing vegetables. Then he turned his head and said in a light-hearted tone, I guessed. Last time I saw you sneaking that little jar of chili sauce in the kitchen. You were tearing up from the spiciness, but still had such a satisfied look on your face. I thought, something that makes you cry but still keep eating, that is probably true love. I was stunned. So, someone would actually notice these little details. Josue lived with me for 3 years. Yet he only complained about the cooking oil smell on me and never cared about what I actually liked to eat. At dinner, there was indeed an extra plate of bright red spicy diced chicken on the table. The chicken was cut into even pieces. The chilies were fried to a fragrant crisp, and just the smell alone was enough to make your mouth water. I picked up a piece and put it in my mouth. The long-missed spiciness stimulated my taste buds, and my eyes actually started to feel warm. Is it good? He looked at me expectantly. It is all right. I lowered my head, hiding the wetness in my eyes. Better than what I make. He seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and picked up some greens for me with his chopsticks. Then eat more, you are too thin. This meal was the most satisfying one I'd had in 3 years. After dinner, I wanted to go wash the dishes, but he stopped me. Your hands are for embroidery, not for touching this grease. He pushed me aside without giving me a chance to argue. Go rest, or go draw your new patterns. I stood at the kitchen doorway, watching his busy figure in front of the stove. Under the dim yellow oil lamp, that figure in blue-green looked so warm, so real. In that instant, I actually had an absurd illusion. If only he were truly my husband, how wonderful that would be. This kind of life went on for most of a month. Chinchinian had completely blended into this household. He not only took on all the housework, but even helped me sort through those tedious silk threads and gave suggestions for my new patterns. He had an excellent eye. Just a few casual pointers could make an originally plain design come alive. The villagers gradually all got to see him. After all, he wore that signature blue-green robe. His build was similar to Josue's, and with my deliberate tacit approval, everyone thought Josue had come back and changed his temperament, becoming family-oriented and considerate. Yishue, your man has really changed completely. This time he is back. Neighbor Aunt Wang chatted with me over the fence. Before, he had his nose up so high, wouldn't even glance at us. And now, he smiles at everyone he meets, even helped my man fix the fence. You finally made it through the hard times. Hearing these words, I had mixed feelings in my heart, and could only smile awkwardly. This is an act where only the two of us know the truth. I know, dreams must eventually come to an end. That afternoon, I was inside rushing to finish a batch of new clothes, while Chinchinian sat by the window helping me sort threads. Suddenly, a flurry of hurried hoofbeats came from outside. The sound drew closer from afar, carrying a familiar sense of oppression, before coming to an abrupt halt at the courtyard gate. The needle in my hand suddenly slipped, pricking into my fingertip, and a drop of fresh blood seeped out. Chinchinian noticed something was wrong immediately. He set down the silk thread, took my hand, and furrowed his brows slightly. How could you be so careless? He lowered his head and naturally took my finger into his mouth, sucking away that drop of blood. The warm, moist sensation made my whole body shiver. Just then, the courtyard gate was kicked open, with a loud bang. The door slammed against the wall, shaking dust down from the roof in a cascade. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the light in the doorway, dressed in black fitted attire, a long blade hanging at his waist, his entire being radiating icy fury. Yi Shui! That voice, so familiar it made my heart pound with fear. It was Josue. He was back. Chinchinian showed not the slightest hint of panic. He still held my hand with no intention of letting go, and merely raised his head slowly to look at the uninvited guest in the doorway. Their gazes met in the air, as if sparks were flying. Josue strode into the room, his gaze falling on our clasped hands, the fury in his eyes instantly ignited. Who are you? He drew the long blade from his waist, the tip pointing straight at Chinchinian's forehead. Let go of her. Only then did Chinchinian leisurely release my hand, even carefully straightening my sleeve cuffs for me. Then, he stood up and blocked in front of me. Although he was dressed in plain clothes with no weapon in hand, his presence at that moment was not the slightest bit inferior to the fully armed Josue. I am Yishue's husband. Chinchinian smiled slightly, his tone calm yet full of provocation. May I ask what you intend by barging into a private residence? Husband. Josue laughed in anger, his laughter full of mockery. What an utter joke. If you are her husband, then who am I? He turned to look at me, his gaze sharp as a blade. Yishue, you tell him. Who am I? I hid behind Chinchinian, watching that man dressed in black. After a month apart, he seemed even thinner, with undisguisable exhaustion and travel weariness between his brows. Those black clothes must be what he specifically changed into to please Zhou Li Hao. Ironic. He was wearing clothes another woman liked, coming back to question me about why I found another man. I took a deep breath and stepped out from behind Chinchinian. I don't know you. I looked straight at Josue, my voice surprisingly calm. My husband left to do business a month ago and only returned today. As for you, sir, I looked him up and down, my gaze lingering on his black attire for a moment. Your getup, sir, looks like that of a wandering swordsman. If you are here for water, there is a well by the door. If you are here to start trouble, I pointed at Chen Chinian. My husband isn't someone to be trifled with either. Josue's eyes widened, as if he had heard something utterly absurd. Yi Shui, have you gone mad? You can't even recognize me. He stepped forward, trying to grab me. I am Josue. Look clearly. Chen Chinian reached out and blocked him. Sir. Chen Chinian's voice turned cold. My wife has an eye ailment and cannot see strangers. If you keep pestering us, don't blame me for being impolite. You'll be impolite. Josue laughed in fury, his saber trembling in his hand, emitting a humming sound. Good. Very good. Then I'd like to see how you, a pretty boy who stole another's nest, plan to be impolite. Before his words even landed, the blade had already arrived. Chen Chinian dodged to the side and grabbed the scissors from the table, meeting the attack head-on. In the cramped room, blades clashed in an instant. The space inside was truly cramped. The two exchanged several moves in an instant, knocking tables and chairs into disarray. Josue's blade technique was bold and sweeping, carrying the killing intent honed on battlefields, each strike lethal. Chen Chinian, on the other hand, only held a small pair of scissors, yet his advantage lay in his agile footwork, weaving through like a swimming dragon, always managing to dodge the blade's edge at the last possible moment, and even finding openings to counterattack. Didn't expect this pretty boy to have some skills. Josue's blade struck the doorframe, sending wood splinters flying, a flash of surprise in his eyes. You flatter me. Chen Chinian's expression remained unchanged, though his breathing was slightly quickened. After all, his wounds hadn't fully healed. However, your blade technique looks somewhat familiar, like the style from the military. Josue let out a cold snort, flipped his wrist, and his blade stance suddenly shifted, becoming even more ferocious. Yi Shui, are you really going to watch this outsider kill your husband? He shouted at me during a gap in the fight. I gripped the doorframe tightly, my nails digging into the wood. My heart was pounding, not just because of the flashing blades before me, but also because of Josue's righteous accusation. Husband. No, he suddenly remembers he is my husband. Stop, seeing Josue's blade about to slash toward Chen Chinian's shoulder. I couldn't hold back any longer and rushed over with a shout. I wasn't trying to save anyone. I just didn't want this just tidied home to become a crime scene. And even less did I want to see Chen Chinian's green robe stained with blood again. Josue didn't expect me to rush over. He forcibly halted his blade's momentum, the edge grazing past my temple hair, slicing off a strand of black hair. Yi Shui, are you looking to die? He was both shocked and furious, grabbing my shoulders so hard it felt like he was about to crush my bones. Chen Chinian also stopped, holding the scissors defensively in front of him, his icy gaze fixed on Josue's hands gripping me. Let go of her. This is my family matter. It is not your place to interfere. Josue glared at him fiercely, then turned to me, the fury in his eyes almost bursting forth. Yi Shui, what on earth is wrong with you? I am Josue. Who do you think I went to the capital for this past month? And now you are actually fighting me for this wild man. For whom? For whom? I pushed his hands away, stepped back, and stood between him and Chen Chinian. Good sir. I still addressed him with the unfamiliar title. But when my husband left a month ago, he was wearing a cyan robe I sewed myself, embroidered with a subtle bamboo leaf pattern. And you, I pointed at his jet black martial attire. This outfit, though the fabric is fine, wasn't made by my hands. My husband loves cyan the most and has never worn black. So, what makes you think you can claim to be my husband? Josue froze. He looked down at his own clothes, a flash of shock crossing his face, which immediately turned extremely ugly. Just because of a piece of clothing? He looked at me in disbelief. Yai Shui, your eyes aren't good, but I am standing right here. Don't you remember my voice? Don't you recognize this blade? Voices can be imitated, blades can be stolen. I said coldly, only this garment, stitched by me with every needle and thread, is the proof I use to identify someone. My husband would never lose it, and would never change out of it just to please someone else. Zhou Suhui's face instantly turned deathly pale. He finally remembered that night when he pawned it. Remembered how I had told him more than once that I identify people only by their clothing. Yi Shui, that was. He opened his mouth, wanting to explain, but found he had no way to begin. That was to buy a gift for the imperial consort. Such words, spoken at this moment, would only make him seem even more ridiculous and shameless, since this brave warrior insists that he is the real one. Chen Qinian suddenly spoke up, leisurely putting away his scissors, standing at my side with such a relaxed posture, as if that fierce battle just now had never happened. Why don't we have a little competition? If you really are, as you claim, Yi Shui's husband for 3 years, then surely you must know everything about her. Zhou Suhui narrowed his eyes. What do you want to compare? Just 3 questions. Chen Qinian held up 3 slender fingers. If you can answer all of them correctly, I'll pack up and leave immediately. No second words. But if you get them wrong, he smiled, with a hint of contempt in that smile. Then please take yourself somewhere cool to stay, and stop harassing us as husband and wife. Bring it on! Zhou Sui's competitive spirit was ignited. He refused to believe that he, the legitimate husband, could lose to some imposter. First question. Chen Qinian looked at me, his gaze gentle. What is Yi Shui's favorite snack? Zhou Sui blurted out without hesitation. Lotus pastry. After speaking, he looked at me full of confidence. But my heart sank sharply, as if someone had punched me square in the chest. Lotus pastry. That was Jolie's favorite snack. Every time he went to the city, he would deliberately take a detour to buy a box, saying he'd bring it back for me to try. But in reality, there were only 1 or 2 crumbs left each time. As for me, because that snack was too cloyingly sweet, I'd have acid reflux for half a day after just 1 bite. Wrong. Chen Qinian shook his head, his voice calm yet firm. Yi Shui gets acid reflux from eating sweets. Her favorite is the pepper salt crispy biscuits from that shop on the west side of the city. Crispy and savory, not cloying. The confidence on Zhou Sui's face froze. He looked toward me, as if seeking confirmation. I didn't look at him, just lowered my head to stare at my toes, tacitly acknowledging Chen Qinian's answer. Second question. Chen Qinian didn't give him a chance to catch his breath. What is Yi Shui's favorite dish? This time Zhou Suhui hesitated. He tried hard to recall the dinner table over these 3 years. What we ate most was plain porridge with simple side dishes. And on the rare occasions there was meat. It was boiled bland and flavorless. Steamed sea bass, he said tentatively. Because once on his birthday, I had specially made this dish. Chen Qinian laughed, his laughter carrying undisguised mockery. Wrong again. Yi Shui can't live without spicy food. Her favorite is stir-fried bullfrog legs with extra dogwood sauce. She only cooked bland food on normal days just to accommodate a certain picky eater. Zhou Sui's face went from pale to ashen, then from ashen to red. He remembered now. Remembered the chili jar in the corner of the kitchen that had been used down to the bottom. Remembered my slightly forlorn expression every time I ate. So it was, to accommodate him all along. Third question. Chen Qinian's voice became somewhat deeper, carrying a hint of solemnity. What is Yi Shui's greatest dream? This question, like a heavy hammer, struck hard upon Zhou Suhui's heart. He was tongue-tied, unable to utter a single word for a long while. Dream? A country village woman, a blind woman who could only embroider, What dreams could she possibly have? Nothing more than supporting her husband and raising children, living out her days in peace. Wasn't that so? In these 3 years, he never once asked what I wanted, nor ever listened to me speak of hopes for the future. In his eyes, I was merely the woman who provided shelter when he was wounded. A temporary place for him to stay. Josue's silence was deafening. Chen Chinian sighed and reached out to hold my hand. This time, I didn't pull away. Yishui's greatest dream. Chen Chinian looked into my eyes and said, word by word, is to open her own clothing shop in the capital, to let the flowing cloud embroidery from her hands become famous across the land, to let everyone in the world know that even if one cannot see with their eyes, their heart can still weave magnificent landscapes. Me tears finally couldn't be held back and fell. This dream, I had only secretly whispered once to the moon on a night of the full moon, after getting drunk. At that time, Josue had long gone to sleep, or wasn't listening at all. But Chen Chinian, he not only listened, but remembered. That is impossible. Josue roared, like a beast whose sore spot had been stepped on. You made all of this up. How could you possibly know these things? You've only been here for a few days. Some things don't depend on the length of time, but on whether one has the heart. Chen Chinian said calmly. You've lost. Please leave. I don't believe it. Josue's eyes were bloodshot red as he raised his blade and was about to charge over. Yishui, tell me, this is all fake, right? He is lying to me, right? Enough, I shouted loudly, shook off Chen Chinian's hand, and blocked Josue's path. I raised my head. Although I couldn't see his face clearly, I could imagine how hysterical he looked right now. How ugly Josue. I finally called out his name, my voice cold as ice. Are you done making a scene? Josue's whole body jolted, as if someone had struck his pressure points. You recognized me? His voice trembled, carrying a hint of hope. My eyes may be bad, but I am not an idiot. I looked at him mockingly. Your voice, your blade techniques, even your scent. How could I truly not remember? I was just saving you some face earlier. Since you recognized me, why are you still siding with him? Josue pointed at Chen Chinian, his fingers trembling. I am your husband. You just stood there watching him humiliate me. The one who humiliated you wasn't him, it was yourself. I approached him step by step, pouring out all the grievances I'd bottled up over these 3 years. Oh, so you know you are my husband. Then when you pawn my clothes to please other women, did you ever think about being my husband? When you abandoned me alone in the deep mountains for Jolie, did you ever think about me being your wife? For these 3 years, you ate the food I made, wore the clothes I sewed. You never once asked what I liked to eat, never cared about what I wanted to do. In your heart, I was nothing but a convenient tool, a spare tire you could toss aside at any moment. But him. I pointed at Chen Chinian. Even as just a passerby, even meeting by chance. He knew I loved spicy food, knew I didn't want to be just a seamstress. He helped me chop firewood, helped me sort threads. And when I was hurt, he made me a thimble. I took out that wooden thimble from my chest and held it up in front of Josue's face. Though rough, it was polished very smooth, and the inner ring was even specially padded with a layer of soft cloth. This thimble, I mentioned it to you 3 times. I said my fingers hurt, that I wanted a thimble. You went to the market so many times, bought rouge and powder for Jolie, yet wouldn't even spend a single copper coin on me. But him. Josue. Hearts are made of flesh. You threw my heart on the ground like garbage and trampled on it. What right do you have now to demand that I love you? Josue stared at that thimble, his face ashen as dead earth. He opened his mouth as if wanting to explain, to salvage things. But in the end it only became one pale, powerless sentence. Yishui, I know I was wrong. I'll change from now on. I'll definitely change. Too late. I turned around, no longer looking at him. Leave. From now on, we go our separate ways. No, I won't leave. Josue suddenly rushed forward, trying to embrace me. Yishui, you can't be so heartless. We have a marriage certificate. We had our wedding ceremony. Chinchinian blocked him again. This time, there was no longer any hint of playfulness in his eyes. Only a chilling, killing intent. She told you to leave. Didn't you hear? The gentle temperament Chinchinian had was completely gone, replaced by the imposing pressure of someone in power. Scram. Just one word, yet it weighed 1,000 pounds. Josue was overwhelmed by that aura and involuntarily took a step back. He looked at my resolute back, then at the unfathomable Chinchinian, and finally understood that the tide had turned. Fine, 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 he said. Fine 3 times in a row, gritting his teeth, his eyes full of resentment. Yishui, you'll regret this. This man's background is unknown. You think he'll really treat you well. One day, you'll come crying and begging me. After saying that, he put away his knife and rushed out of the courtyard without looking back. Peace returned to the courtyard. Only, the leaves blown down by the wind were spinning on the ground. I stood in place, my body trembling slightly. Those words just now had exhausted all my strength. A warm hand gently rested on my shoulder. It is okay now. Chinchinian's voice returned to that gentle tone. He is gone. I turned around, threw myself into that embrace carrying the scent of fresh grass, and finally burst into tears, crying for 3 years of misplaced affection, crying for this long overdue break. Chinchinian didn't say anything, just held me quietly, gently patting my back over and over. Only when I was tired from crying and lifted my head from his embrace, did I somewhat embarrassedly wipe away my tears. I made a fool of myself in front of you. How could you have? He reached out to smooth my messy hair. What you said just now, you said it really well. I looked at him, and though I couldn't see his expression clearly, I could feel that he was smiling. Actually, I hesitated for a moment, but still asked, how did you know about those things? Chinchinian smiled. Didn't I say? As long as you put your heart into it, there are Besides, he suddenly lowered his head, leaning close to my ear, his voice low and suggestive. I also wanted to prove that perhaps I am more suited to be your husband than him. The days after Josue left weren't as peaceful as I had imagined. Although he was gone, he was like a thorn embedded in flesh, stirring from time to time to remind me of his existence. First, all kinds of rumors started spreading around the village. Some said I was unfaithful, seducing some random man and driving away my legitimate husband. Some said Chinchinian was a wanted criminal who specialized in swindling money and sex. Some even said Josue left for the capital to seek medicine for me, and that I was an ungrateful wretch. By the time these words reached my ears, I could already keep my composure without batting an eye. But Chinchinian couldn't. That day I was washing clothes by the river when I heard a few women pointing and whispering behind my back. Oh my, that blind woman sure has good luck, driving one away and getting another. Who knows what foxy tricks she is using exactly? I heard that wild man doesn't even have travel papers. He is probably some fugitive on the run. It'd serve her right if the authorities came and hauled her away with him someday. I was about to pick up my basin and leave when I saw a figure in blue-green step in front of those women. Chinchinian was holding 2 freshly caught fish, wearing his usual gentle smile, but his eyes were frighteningly cold. If you aunties have so much free time, why not worry more about your own crops in the fields? His voice wasn't loud, but it carried an unquestionable pressure. My Yishui is timid and can't stand hearing such gossip. If I hear another word... He paused, and the fish in his hand suddenly flicked its tail, splashing water all over the ringleader's face. Aya, what are you doing? The woman shrieked. Hand slipped. Sorry. Chen Chinian apologized without a shred of sincerity, then turned and pulled me up. Let's go home. Fish tastes best when it is fresh. From that day on, there was much less gossip in the village. Everyone could see that this man who seemed gentle as jade was actually a tough character you didn't want to mess with. But the unease in my heart grew heavier and heavier. Zhou Sui's venomous glare before he left, and Chen Chinian's hidden martial skills, all made me feel that this was just the calm before the storm. That night, I was sewing a wedding dress under the lamplight. It was a custom order from the Lai family's daughter in the neighboring village, to be ready for the wedding on the 8th of next month. Mandarin ducks playing in water were embroidered on the red silk, every stitch radiating joy. Chen Chinian sat nearby reading a book, helping me trim loose threads from time to time. The candlelight flickered, and life was peaceful. Yi Shui. He suddenly spoke, breaking the silence. I didn't even lift my head. Have you ever thought about leaving this place? The needle in my hand paused. Leave? Go where? To the capital. He put down his book and looked at me with burning eyes. Don't you want to open a clothing shop? Daxi village is too small. It can't hold your dreams. The capital is prosperous. That is where you should go. The capital. That was the place I had dreamed of, and also the place Zhou Suhui abandoned me for Zhou Li to go to. I want to go too. I smiled bitterly. But I don't have enough travel money, and with my eyes, even if I went, I'd be completely in the dark. How could I open a shop? You don't need to worry about your eyes. There was a hint of certainty in Chen Chinian's voice. I know there is a miracle doctor in the capital who specializes in eye diseases. As for travel money, he took out a jade pendant from his chest and placed it on the table. It was a piece of warm, lustrous mutton-fat white jade, carved with intricate patterns. Even though I knew nothing about jade, I could tell this thing was priceless. This should be enough. I touched the jade in surprise, my fingertips brushing against 2 characters carved on the back, although I couldn't read. This pattern. The pattern was a bat with wings spread, as if about to take flight, surrounded by auspicious clouds. My heart suddenly skipped a beat. This pattern, I had seen it before. In my fragmented, hazy childhood memories, there seemed to be a swaddling cloth embroidered with this exact pattern, and not long ago, when I refused the butterfly hairpin that Zhou Sui tried to give me, I had said I had a bat-shaped birthmark on my waist, although that was a lie I made up to refuse him. I did remember that when I was bathing as a child, my mother once pointed at a red mark on my lower back and said it was good fortune. A bat carrying blessings. This jade pendant. I asked with a trembling voice, "Is it yours?" "It is mine." Chen Chinian looked at me, his gaze becoming deep and complex. "It is also yours." "What do you mean, Yi Shui?" "Actually, I didn't come to Daxi village this time for business, nor was I just passing through." He took a deep breath, as if mustering great resolve. "I came to find someone." "Find who?" "To find my fiancé." The needle in my hand fell to the ground. Fiancé. So he was also someone with an existing engagement. Then what did everything this past month mean? A huge wave of loss surged through my heart, 100 times stronger than when Zhou Sui left. "Since you have a fiancé, then why did you still?" I bit my lip, holding back tears. "Let me finish." He gripped my hand, a bit too forcefully. "My fiancée is the long-lost legitimate daughter of the Pingyang Marquis Manor, with the single name Yao. She went missing as a child, and her family searched for over a decade before finally receiving word not long ago that she might have ended up in Daxi village, Qingzhou, Pingyang Marquis Manor, Li Wenyao. What does this have to do with me? And I am the second son of the Chen family, Chen Chinian, betrothed to her before we were even born." He looked at me and spoke word by word, revealing the truth that shattered my soul. "Yi Shui, you are Li Wenyao, impossible." I shot to my feet, knocking over the sewing basket on the table. I am an orphan. I was picked up by Granny Wang in the village. How could I possibly be a marquise's daughter? This was too absurd. Even more absurd than Josue saying he loved me. Don't be so quick to deny it. Chen Chinian picked up the jade pendant and placed it in my hand. This jade pendant is a token. There is an identical one that should be with you. Or rather, in the swaddling clothes from when you went missing. I thought of that worn-out, tattered swaddling cloth I had long since buried at the bottom of my chest. I rushed to the bedside like a madwoman and dug out that old box. Among a pile of junk, I found a piece of torn cloth that was only half intact. On it, there was unmistakably embroidered the exact same bat and auspicious cloud pattern as on the jade pendant. My whole body went weak, and I collapsed onto the ground. So it turns out, I really wasn't an unwanted wild child. I had a home, parents, and even a fiancé. Ishui. Chen Chinian walked over, squatted in front of me, and gently wiped the tears from my face. I know this is hard to accept right away, but I've looked into it. The Granny Wang who found you back then once said that besides this swaddling cloth, you also had a longevity lock on you, engraved with the characters Wen Yao. She pawned that lock to buy rice porridge to feed you. Everything added up. Granny Wang did tell me about the longevity lock before she passed away, but I just thought she was being senile at the time. So you knew it was me all along. I looked up at the man in front of me. No wonder. No wonder he felt like an old friend from the moment we met. No wonder he granted my every request. No wonder he said he wanted to take me to the capital. So all of this was because I am Li Wenyao. At first it was just a suspicion. Chen Chinian said honestly, that foggy day, I was injured and happened to be saved by you by chance. When I saw the birthmark on your waist, you accidentally exposed it while changing my bandages that day. I became about 70 or 80% certain, so he had already seen everything. My face instantly turned beet red. Then why didn't you say so earlier? Because I wanted you to choose for yourself. He looked at me, his gaze so tender it could drip water. I wanted you to come with me because you like Chen Chinian as a person, not because of that marriage contract. Besides, his eyes darkened slightly. At that time, Zhou Suhui was still by your side. I wasn't sure how much feelings you still had for him, and I didn't want to use my status to pressure you. Speaking of Zhou Suhui, my heart turned cold again. If I was the daughter of the Marquise's household, then Zhou Sui abandoning me for the imperial consort back then. Wasn't that like picking up sesame seeds while losing the watermelon? If he found out the truth, he'd probably regret it so much his guts would turn green. Yishui, come back to the capital with me. Chen Chinian pleaded again. The Marquise and Madame are both waiting for you. Besides, Zhou Suhui won't let this go. He has the imperial consort backing him up. If you continue staying here, sooner or later you'll be in danger. I remained silent for a long time. Going to the capital meant I had to say goodbye to everything familiar here, and face a completely unfamiliar world of nobility as deep as the sea. But staying here was indeed no longer safe either. More importantly, I wanted to see that capital said to be splendidly prosperous, wanted to pursue my dreams. And also, I wanted to be with this person in front of me. Okay. I nodded. I'll go with you. Chen Chinian smiled, that smile more radiant than ever before. He held me tightly. This time, I will never lose you. However, fate didn't seem to intend to let us leave so smoothly. The night before we had packed our belongings and were about to set off, Zhou Sui came again. This time, he wasn't alone, but brought a squad of soldiers with him. Torches lit up the small courtyard as bright as day. Seize this wanted criminal. Zhou Sui sat atop a tall horse, holding a wanted poster in his hand, a ferocious smile on his face. Chen Chinian, as a criminal wanted by the court, where do you think you can run? I was stunned. Wanted criminal. Chen Chinian. Zhou Sui, isn't that him in the picture? I picked up the wanted poster. Although I couldn't see the portrait clearly, I could recognize the three large characters, Chen Chinian, on it. The charge was colluding with rebels, plotting treason. Treason. Chinian was actually a treasonous rebel. I turned back to look at Chen Chinian, hoping he could give me an explanation. But he just stood there quietly, his expression unchanged, without even a hint of panic. If you want to condemn someone, you'll never lack an excuse, he said indifferently, his gaze piercing through the crowd, staring directly at Zhou Sui. Commander Zhou, to settle a personal grudge. You'd even pin such baseless charges on my head. You've really gone to great lengths. Whether it is baseless or not, we'll find out once we take you back for interrogation. Zhou Sui sneered coldly, waving his hand to give the order. Get him. If there is any resistance, kill without mercy. Hold it. Chen Chinian suddenly pulled out a token from his chest and held it up high. Under the firelight, the golden token glittered brilliantly, engraved with a coiling dragon. This token represents His Majesty's presence. Who dares touch me? All the soldiers froze, instinctively falling to their knees. Zhou Sui's face changed drastically, staring fixedly at the token. An imperially bestowed gold token. How do you have this? There is plenty Commander Zhou doesn't know. Chen Chinian put away the token and pulled me along, striding up to Zhou Sui's horse. Go back and tell your master, the Chen family's case isn't over yet. If she wants my life, let her come take it herself. With that, he swung onto the horse, pulled me up in front of him, whipped the horse into a gallop, and charged out of the encirclement. The wind howled past our ears. I leaned against his chest, listening to his strong heartbeat, my mind in complete chaos. Chen Chinian, who exactly are you? If you were the fiancée of a marquise's daughter, how could you be involved in a treason case? If you were a rebel, how could you have an imperially bestowed golden medallion? Don't be afraid, he whispered softly in my ear. Once we reach the capital, everything will come to light. I closed my eyes and gripped his lapel tightly. No matter who he was, no matter what lay ahead, in this moment, I only trusted him. The horse's hooves shattered the night, and we left Daxi village far behind. The journey was far from peaceful. Although Zhou Sui was temporarily intimidated by that golden medallion, behind him stood noble consort Zhou Li and the Zhou family, who now held absolute power over the court. Since they had already torn off all pretenses, they wouldn't let us go easily. We hid by day and traveled by night, avoiding the main roads, and only taking those rugged paths. Chen Chinian's wounds hadn't fully healed, and with all this jostling, his face grew paler and paler. But he never complained once, and every time we stopped to rest, he would turn around to comfort me, finding me food and water to drink. Yishui, hang in there a little longer. Once we pass Qingsha Pass up ahead, there will be people to meet us. He stuffed the last half of a dry, hard-steamed bun into my hands, while he himself only drank a few sips of stream water, looking at his gaunt face. My heart ached unbearably. You should eat some too. I broke the bun in half and handed it to him. He shook his head. I am not hungry. You are weak. You need to eat more. If you won't eat, I won't eat either. I stubbornly held the bun up to his lips. He was stunned for a moment, then smiled helplessly, lowered his head and took a bite. So sweet, he said. It was clearly a steamed bun that had been sitting out for 2 days and was starting to go stale. Yet he ate it as if it were the finest delicacy. Finally, on a dark and windy night, we arrived at a dilapidated temple outside Qingxia Pass. Summonon was already waiting there. It was a group of sturdy men dressed in ordinary merchant attire, yet each with piercing eyes. Upon seeing Chen Chinian, they dropped to one knee in unison. Young master, your subordinates arrived late and made you suffer. The leader was a middle-aged man, and when he saw the wounds on Chen Chinian's body, his eyes turned red. No matter. Chen Chinian waved his hand and pulled me in front of him. This is the young madam. Everyone's eyes fell on me in unison. I felt a bit uneasy and instinctively wanted to shrink back. Looking like this, dressed in coarse cloth, face weathered by hardship. How could I possibly look like a marquise's daughter? But those men bowed respectfully. Greetings to the young madam. At that moment, I suddenly understood that Chen Chinian wasn't just giving me a status. He was giving me dignity and confidence. With these men escorting us, the rest of the journey went much more smoothly. We switched to a comfortable carriage, and Chen Chinian could finally rest and recover properly. In the carriage, he finally told me everything. As it turned out, the Chen family had been loyal subjects for generations, deeply valued by the late emperor. But after the new emperor ascended the throne, he favored consort Zhou, and the Zhou family's power grew immense, viewing the Chen family as a thorn in their side. A month ago, the dams in Jiangyan burst, drowning countless common folk. This was actually a shoddy project caused by the Zhou family embezzling the dam repair funds. But to shirk responsibility, they forged evidence and framed Father Chen, who was in charge of overseeing the construction, for corruption and bribery. The entire Chen family was thrown into prison, and Chen Chinian only escaped this disaster because he was traveling abroad for studies. But he became a wanted criminal, hunted all the way until he fled to Daxi village. That gold medallion was the immunity token bestowed upon the Chen family by the late emperor, and it was also Chen Chinian's last protective charm. So, you are returning to the capital this time to overturn the case? I asked. Yes? A cold glint flashed in Chen Chinian's eyes. I am not only going to rescue my parents and family, but I'll also make the Zhou family pay blood for blood. I held his hand. I'll help you. Although I am just a weak woman, I don't want to be nothing but a burden who needs protecting. Chen Chinian held my hand in return, his gaze gentle yet resolute. All right. When husband and wife are of one mind, their combined strength can cut through metal. The day we arrived at the capital happened to be Liqiu. The prosperity of the capital exceeded my imagination. Wide streets, shops lined up row upon row, bustling crowds, and the scent of rouge and wine drifting in the air. This was the place I had dreamed of. We didn't go directly back to the marquise's residence, but first stayed at a villa on the outskirts of the city. Chen Chinian said the current situation was unclear, and returning to the residence rashly might bring trouble to the marquise's household and put us in a passive position. Whenever you are ready, I'll take you back to acknowledge your family, he said. I nodded. Although I now knew my origins, I had after all grown up in the countryside for so many years, and still felt somewhat nervous about that grand noble household. In the days that followed, Chen Chinian became busy. During the day he went out to contact his former subordinates and gather evidence. And at night he came back to talk with me and tell me interesting stories about the capital. And I wasn't idle either. I pawned that jade pendant for some silver, rented a small shop near the villa, and hung up a sign reading, Yiren Feng. Although my eyes weren't good, my skills were still there. With my unique flowing cloud embroidery and novel designs, my shop quickly gained a small reputation in the area. Quite a few madams and young ladies came drawn by the reputation, just to get a garment sewn by my own hands. That day, a special customer came to the shop. She was an elegant and dignified woman. Although her attire was understated, her every gesture revealed an unmistakable air of nobility. The moment she entered, her gaze fell on a wedding dress I had hung on the wall. It was something I had embroidered in my spare time, red background with gold thread, depicting 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix. What exquisite embroidery, the woman exclaimed, her voice trembling slightly. This needlework, it is like something an old friend of mine created. I stepped forward. Although I couldn't see her face clearly, I could sense a familiar warmth about her. If Madam likes it, you may try it on. The woman turned to look at me, her gaze lingering on my face for a long while, when suddenly her eyes reddened. So alike, truly alike, she murmured to herself. I was somewhat bewildered. What does madam mean by alike? Child, what is your name? The woman grasped my hand, her voice choked with emotion. My name is Yi Shui. Yi Shui, the beauty by the water's edge, the woman muttered, when she suddenly noticed the jade pendant half exposed at my waist. It was the one Chen Qinian had given me. I had always worn it close to my body. The woman looked as if struck by lightning, staring fixedly at the jade pendant. Where did you get this jade pendant? My heart stirred, vaguely guessing her identity. This is an old possession I recovered not long ago, I said probingly. I heard it was a keepsake lost by the Pingyang Marquise's residence many years ago. Tears instantly burst from the woman's eyes as she pulled me into her embrace. My child, mother has finally found you. It turned out that this woman was none other than the Marquis of Pingyang's wife, my birth mother. That day, the entire Yiren Feng dissolved into tears. So it turned out, mother had never given up searching for me. She heard about a newly opened embroidery shop in the capital with unique needlework. So she came to take a look on a whim, never expecting to actually find me. The day I returned to the Marquise's manor, the grand occasion left me a bit overwhelmed. The Marquis, my father, that man who was said to be incredibly imposing, couldn't help but shed tears when he saw me. And my brothers and sisters gathered around me, fussing over my well-being, afraid I had suffered even the slightest grievance. I finally understood what it meant to feel the warmth of family. This was completely different from the feeling of living under someone else's roof back in Daxi village. Here, I was cherished and treasured. However, this warmth didn't last too long, because Chen Qinian's case had begun its trial. This was a battle that would determine the Chen family's survival, and also a direct confrontation between Chen Qinian and the Zhou family. That day, as the legitimate daughter of the Pingyang Marquise's manor, I also went to observe the court proceedings. The Court of Judicial Review's hall was solemn and majestic. Chen Qinian knelt below the hall, his prisoner's garb unable to conceal his noble bearing. And, sitting at the top overseeing the trial, besides the Chief Justice of the Court of Judicial Review, was surprisingly Zhou Suhui. He was now a favorite before the emperor, deputy commander of the Imperial Guard, specifically responsible for the security and assistance of this case. Seeing me appear, a flash of shock passed through Zhou Sui's eyes, which quickly turned into deep jealousy and resentment. He probably never expected that the blind country girl he abandoned would transform into the untouchable noble daughter of a marquise's household. Chen Qinian, do you know your crimes? The Minister of Justice slammed his gavel. This commoner is innocent. Chen Qinian declared loudly, my father was framed. The real embezzlers are the Zhou family. How dare you? Zhou Sui slammed the table and stood up. How dare you make such baseless accusations in court? Where is your evidence? The evidence is right here. Chen Qinian pulled out an account book from his robe and held it high. This is the real account book left by the Jiangnan River governor before his death. It clearly records every tale of silver the Zhou family embezzled, and the evidence of how they cut corners and created shoddy construction projects. As soon as these words came out, the entire hall erupted in uproar. Zhou Suhui's face changed drastically, and he instinctively tried to snatch the account book guards. This is forged evidence. Seize him. Several guards rushed forward. I'd like to see who dares. I stood up and pulled out a token from my sleeve. It was the Marquise's household token my father gave me. The Pingyang Marquise's household is here. Who dares touch my fiancée? These words rang out, loud and clear. The entire hall fell silent. Everyone stared at me in shock, especially Zhou Sui. He stared at me intently, his eyes filled with emotions too complex to read. There was shock, regret, anger, and a hint of despair. Yi Shui. You, Lord Zhou, I looked at him coldly. Please call me Miss Li, or young Madam Chen. Zhou Suhui staggered back a step, as if all his strength had been drained away. Just then, A eunuch rushed in, shouting in a shrill voice, "Imperial edict has arrived." Everyone knelt down. By the mandate of heaven, the emperor decrees, upon investigating the Chen family case, many doubts remain. The 3 judicial offices are hereby ordered to jointly review and thoroughly investigate to the end. So it is decreed. Chen Chinian raised his head and looked at me, his eyes full of amusement. We won the first round. But this was only the beginning. The Zhou family had deep roots and would never admit defeat easily. The real bloodbath was still to come. After the court adjourned, Zhou Sui blocked my way. "Yishui," his voice was hoarse. "I have something to say to you. I don't think we have anything left to talk about." I tried to go around him. "Just one thing." He blocked my path, his eyes almost pleading. If I hadn't left back then, would everything now be different?" I stopped in my tracks, looking at his blurred face. "What if? There are no so many what-ifs in this world." "Josuhe," I said calmly, "even if you hadn't left, I still wouldn't have been a good match for you, because what you loved was never me, but a tool to satisfy your vanity and your need to protect. What I want is equal respect and wholehearted love. These things, you can't give, but Chen Chinian can." After saying that, I left without looking back. Behind me, Josue stood rooted to the spot for a long time, like a weathered stone statue. When I returned to the Marquise's manor, Chen Chinian was already waiting for me. He had changed out of his prison clothes and put on a clean blue robe. Although it wasn't the one I had sewn for him back then, it still looked so good on him. "You are back." He walked over with a smile. I walked over and hugged him. "Let's go home." "Okay, let's go home." At that moment, I felt an unprecedented sense of peace. No matter how difficult the road ahead, as long as he was with me, I wasn't afraid of anything. However, we had all underestimated the Zhou family's madness. Just as the Chen family case was about to come to light, an assassination targeting us was quietly closing in. Although Chen Chinian's case had taken a turn for the better, the Zhou family's counterattack came fiercer than expected. The capital appeared calm on the surface, but undercurrents were surging beneath. We were extra careful whenever we went out, and the Marquise's manor had even increased the number of guards. That day, I was checking the accounts at the workshop when Chen Chinian suddenly arrived. His expression was grave, holding a secret letter in his hand. "Yishui, there is bad news." He closed the door and lowered his voice. "Consort Zhou has made her move in the palace. She placed the Empress under house arrest on charges of treason." The Empress was an old friend of my mother, and also one of the key witnesses for overturning this case. My heart tightened. Then what should we do? We must obtain the evidence of the imperial consort forging the decree back then. A flash of determination crossed Chen Chinian's eyes. "That evidence is in the secret chamber of the Zhou family's old residence. It is the Zhou family's last trump card, and also their Achilles heel. But the Zhou residence is heavily guarded. How can we get in?" "I have a way." Chen Chinian looked at me, his gaze somewhat hesitant. "It is just, I need your help. As long as I can help you, I am willing to do anything." Chen Chinian's plan was very bold. In 3 more days, it would be the 80th birthday of the Zhou family's old madam. The Zhou family would hold a grand banquet, inviting all the nobles in the capital. As the newly reunited daughter of the Marquise's household, I was naturally among the invited. He wanted me to use this opportunity to sneak into the inner courtyard, distract the guards, and create a chance for him to infiltrate the secret chamber. This was no different from pulling a tooth from a tiger's mouth. But I didn't shrink back in the slightest. "All right, I'll go." On the day of the birthday banquet, the Zhou residence was decorated with lanterns and streamers, bustling with excitement. I wore a light purple long dress, my hair styled in the most fashionable coiffure of the time, and walked through the Zhou residence's gates accompanied by my mother. Along the way, Many people pointed and whispered about me. After all, a daughter lost for many years, now entangled in the Chen family's case, was itself a huge topic of gossip. I kept my eyes straight ahead, wearing a proper smile, responding to the various greetings. Zhou Suohe was also there. As a capable member of the Zhou family, he was in charge of today's security. When he saw me, he paused for a moment, his expression complex, but he quickly regained his composure and adopted a cold demeanor. He probably thought I was there to make a scene or to gloat. Halfway through the banquet, I made an excuse to change clothes and left the front hall. Following the map Chen Qinian gave me, I quietly made my way around to the back courtyard. That place was the Zhou family's forbidden area. Normally only core members of the Zhou family could enter. I had just turned through a moon gate when someone stopped me. "Miss Li, this is not a place you should be." It was Zhou Suhui. He held his blade, leaning against the wall as if he had been waiting for me all along. I was startled inside, but forced myself to appear calm. "Lord Zhou is in quite the mood, not entertaining guests in the front hall. What are you doing hiding here? I was waiting for you." Zhou Sui straightened up, approaching me step by step. "I know what you are trying to do. Chen Qinian sent you here to steal something, didn't he?" Having my thoughts exposed, I actually calmed down instead. "Since you know, then what do you want? To arrest me?" "I don't want to arrest you." Zhou Sui stopped in front of me, looking down at me. "Yishui, as long as you are willing to turn back, I can pretend nothing ever happened. I can even help you rescue the Chen family's people, as long as you leave Chen Qinian and come with me." "Come with you." I laughed. "To where? To keep being your wife who can't see the light of day, or to be a shield between you and the imperial consort?" "Ali and I have already enough," I interrupted him. "Zhou Sui, do you still not understand? There is no possibility between us anymore. Not just because you abandoned me, but because we're fundamentally not the same kind of people. You can sacrifice everything for power, including your conscience and your lover. But I just want to live with a clean conscience." Zhou Suhuai's face turned deathly pale. "A clean conscience?" He sneered. "You think Chen Qinian is clean? He used you to infiltrate the Zhou family, putting you in danger. That is what you call clean. I did it willingly." I looked straight into his eyes. "For him, for justice, I am willing to take risks. But you'll never understand that feeling." Zhou Sui stared at me fixedly, a flash of pain in his eyes, then reluctance, finally turning into deep resignation. "Consider it repaying the debt for saving my life back then." He closed his eyes, no longer looking at me. "Go now." I didn't hesitate, quickly running deeper into the backyard. Behind the rockery, I successfully lured away 2 guards. Chen Qinian took the opportunity to sneak into the secret room and obtained that crucial piece of evidence. By the time we retreated unscathed and returned to the Marquise's residence, it was already late at night. Chen Qinian hugged me excitedly. "Yishui, we did it." I leaned against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, yet feeling somewhat empty inside. Josue's final look left me inexplicably uneasy. The next day, the evidence was presented before the emperor. The evidence was irrefutable, leaving the Zhou family with no defense. The emperor was furious and ordered a thorough investigation of the Zhou family. The imperial consort was stripped of her title and banished to the cold palace. The Chen family was finally vindicated. Chen Qinian's parents were released without charges and reinstated to their positions. I also formally set a wedding date with Chen Qinian as the daughter of the Marquis' household. Everything was moving in a good direction. However, the Zhou family was not willing to fall, just like that. Just when we thought the dust had settled, news came. Zhou Suhui had broken out of prison. He not only rescued several key members of the Zhou family, but also took a group of death soldiers with him, disappearing without a trace. the capital fell into panic once again. Chen Qinian assigned more people to protect me, and the Marquise's mansion was heavily guarded, but I always felt like a pair of eyes was watching me from the shadows. That day, I was going to Yirenfeng to deliver a batch of newly made wedding dresses. Although Chen Qinian was worried, I insisted on going. It was the lifelong dream of several girls, and I couldn't break my promise. On the way back, the carriage passed through a small grove. Suddenly, the sound of something cutting through the air reached us. "Watch out!" the coachman shouted, and the carriage lurched violently. Several sharp arrows pierced through the carriage, flying past just grazing my scalp. Immediately after, a group of men in black rushed out from the woods, each wielding sharp blades, radiating murderous intent. The guards immediately rushed forward, and both sides clashed in fierce combat. "Miss Lee, run!" The captain of the guards desperately protected me as I got off the carriage, running deep into the forest. I closed my eyes, certain I was going to die. Clang, a loud sound of metal clashing against metal. The expected pain never came. I opened my eyes and saw a familiar figure blocking in front of me. That jet-black fitted outfit, that blood-stained long blade. It was Joe. With his back to me, he single-handedly blocked the attacks of the three men in black. His blade work was still sharp, but his movements were somewhat sluggish, as if he was injured. "Joe Suhi!" I cried out in shock. "Run!" He roared without looking back. "Head east. Chen Qinian's men will be here any moment." "What about you? Don't worry about me, Scram." He kicked away one of the men in black, then with a backhanded slash blocked a stray arrow aimed at me. Blood flowed down from his arm, staining the ground red. I gritted my teeth and turned to run. I knew staying here would only make me a burden to him. I ran desperately until I heard Chen Qinian shout, "Yishui!" The moment I saw Chen Qinian, my legs went weak and I collapsed into his arms. "Summonon. Someone tried to kill me. Zhou Sui saved me," I said breathlessly. Chen Qinian's expression changed instantly, and he immediately rushed into the forest with his men. By the time we got back, the battle was already over. The ground was covered with corpses. Some were the black-clad assassins, others were the death warriors Zhou Sui had brought, and, in the middle of the pile of bodies, Zhou Sui was half-kneeling on the ground, using his blade to support himself. He was drenched in blood, with several arrows piercing his body, looking like a hedgehog shot into a sieve. But his eyes were still open, staring fixedly in the direction we came from. Seeing that I was safe and sound, a glimmer of relief finally flickered in his clouded eyes. "Zhou Suhui." I rushed over, wanting to hold him up, but the stench of blood on him made me step back. He looked at me, a wan smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Yishui, I don't owe you anymore." After saying those words, he collapsed with a heavy thud at that moment. A mix of emotions churned inside me. Did I hate him? I once did. Did I love him? That love was long gone. But in the end, he repaid the debt of love from those years with his life. Only later did I learn that Zhou Sui hadn't actually staged the prison break. It was planned by the imperial consort's die-hard loyalists. He had only pretended to go along with it and infiltrated them, with the purpose of obtaining that list and completely eradicating the remnants of the Zhou family. He knew his sins were too grave, and there was no turning back. So he chose this way to atone for himself, and to pave the final path for me and Chen Qinian. In that forest, he not only saved me, but also killed all the assassins who wanted to harm me. When he died, he still had that wooden thimble I once rejected tucked against his chest. He had secretly carved it himself. Though rough, it was polished very smooth. What a pity. Some things once missed are missed forever. No matter how you try to make up for it, you can never go back to the way things were. The remnants of the Zhou family were all swept away, and the capital finally returned to peace. My wedding date with Chenchinian arrived as promised. On the day of the grand wedding, there was a 10-mile red dowry procession, and the whole city celebrated. I wore the wedding dress I had sewn with my own hands, adorned with a phoenix crown and rosy cape, and was led by Chenchinian's hand, step by step into the wedding hall. Through the red veil, I saw those hands holding mine, slender, warm, and strong. Yishui. Don't be afraid. I am here, he whispered softly in my ear. This one sentence was worth more than 1,000 words. After the ceremony, we stood on the city tower, watching the fireworks fill the sky. Chinian, thank you. I leaned against his shoulder. Thank me for what? Thank you for giving me a home. Thank you for letting me be Lai Wenyao again. And thank you for letting me still be Yishui. Chen Chinian smiled, and that smile, illuminated by the fireworks, was exceptionally radiant. Silly girl. I should be the one thanking you. Thank you for holding my hand in the thick fog. Thank you for being willing to believe in me. And thank you even more for being willing to marry me. He lowered his head and kissed me between my eyebrows. From now on, no matter the storms, I'll walk with you together. I closed my eyes, feeling the happiness of this moment. Everything from the past was like a long dream. The dream has ended, but life must go on. And this time, I know, I am no longer alone.